Next part of the course, we're going to be looking at general concepts of ethics. And I'll be asking for a basic definition of ethics. What is ethics? So give some thought to what that term is, because I'll be asking you to define it. Is it just being good? And if it's being good according to whose standards of what is good? Some people will suggest that there can be no universal definition of what is good. That what might be good for me might not be good for you. And indeed, we'll be asking, what are the sources of ethics? Where do people's ethical traditions come from? And we're going to see that sometimes it comes from cultures, sometimes it comes from our parents, sometimes it comes from religious traditions. Indeed, religions are in the being good business, aren't they? And what are we going to find? Different cultures believe and value different things. Parents come from different experiential context and believe in different things. And certainly we have a panoply of religious traditions, many of whom believe much different things. So, as one philosopher said, is the night so dark that all the cats are gray? Meaning, we can't define ethics, that ethics is inevitably a question of, well, it depends. It depends on what religious tradition, cultural tradition, what your parents thought, how they were raised. And I'm going to suggest to you that that's not the case. And in fact, I'm going to suggest to you that's not the case so strongly that when we are engaged in discussions in class, the word or the phrase, "it depends," is not allowed to be uttered. It doesn't depend. And the reason is because where the rubber meets the road in terms of ethical analysis is, in the end, you have to make a decision. You have to say, I either take one course of action or I take another. And, if we were, an awful lot of what we're going to do here is philosophy. This is really a mini philosophy course. My friends in the philosophy department look at our materials and call us philosophy light. I beg to differ. Because we are going to take a good, close, serious, sophisticated look at many of the philosophical traditions. When we try and define what it means to be good, we're lucky that people have been thinking about this for a couple of thousand years, going back to the ancient Greeks. And so it's a subject that has gotten a great deal of attention and scrutiny. And we're going to look at the various philosophical traditions about how one defines being good. And what the course is designed to do is give you both a theoretical context as well as a vocabulary to start doing ethical analysis. Where we will absolutely depart from the philosophy department, and I don't apologize for this for a minute, is we're a business school. And for us, it isn't just good enough to know what Kant said about the categorical imperative. That only gets us so far. Knowing what the categorical imperative is, knowing what Immanuel Kant thought about that, that's only the first step. The second step is then taking the concept of a categorical imperative and applying it to modern business decisions. We're confronted with how we go about doing a reduction in force. Gee, I know nobody's had to deal with that in the workplace in the last 18 months, have you? We're confronted where we're ordered to have a reduction in force. How do we go about doing it? If people have to go out the door, presumably we want the decision that are being made about who goes out the door to be done in a fair way. We will be looking at various ethical models that can provide us some guidance for defining what is fairness and applying it to practical situations, and assisting us in making what can be some very, very difficult decisions. So we're going to talk about corporate social responsibility first. We're going to talk about concepts of ethics next, and that's going to take us pretty much through halfway through the course to our midterm examination. And thereafter, those are sort of broad concepts. In the second half of the class, we're going to look at specific subject matter areas such as how do we deal with social responsibility and business ethics when it comes to questions of the ecology, sustainability, and keeping the planet green. How do we apply those concepts when we come to concepts of globalization, where we have operations and are dealing internationally and not just locally? What about corporate involvement in the political world and in corporate involvement in politics and in understanding the dynamics of regulation? What about employment and civil rights in the workplace? So the first half of the class, we arm ourselves with understanding the theory, learning the vocabulary, having some practice in applying those, and then in the second half of the class, we look at more specific subject matters in which we apply those general concepts. And since just learning it is the first step, applying it is an important second step, we use the case method. We're going to, in your textbook at the beginning of every chapter, is a mini case. What is a case? A case is a story of a business that has actually dealt with or confronted the problems that we're talking about. At the end of the chapter is a much larger case, usually 10 or 15 pages, that provide a detailed study of what's happened to a corporation who's had to deal with the problem that we've confronted.